I saw some of you pranaming. That was a nice way to begin. I bow to thee who dwells in thee. I've been asked to speak tonight on removing mental ruts with new ways of living. And simply put, this is a class on habits. But not just any habit. You know, our beloved Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda, in his lessons and in his lectures, has given us more than ample information on the science of habit. And by science, I mean there's aspects of developing habits and getting rid of habits that we need to understand if we're to deal with them. And all habits aren't bad. It's not just getting rid. If it weren't for habits, we'd have to relearn how to walk every morning, how to brush our teeth, how to talk. So it's not that type of habit that we'll be talking about this evening. We're going to be talking about one habit, ultimately. One very important habit that truly is the foundation of our spiritual life and our spiritual success. What is a mental rut? And I thought about this. How am I going to express it? This is something we really need to understand very deeply. It's important to really understand that mental rut, of course, is part of delusion that we live in, this unreality of the physical world. I usually don't like to use, gimmicks in my lectures, but I had an experience recently that I'd like to share with all of you that I hope will help you understand what a mental rut is. Just, can all of you see on the screen? For those who can't, this is important. I want you, well, it is, and it's not a joke. Like I say, I don't like gimmicks. But I learned something recently about the simple banana. God made this banana. It's a very unique, universal fruit. And He made it with this long, strong stem, because it has to support all of that weight. Isn't it? Yeah, we all know this. And when it comes time that we're going to eat the banana, we grab that strong stem, don't we? Is this how you do it? But it's not ripe. It's strong. What do you do? And some people, you bite it. Or if you're a little more sophisticated, you cut it with a knife. Isn't that true? But do you know, if you turn the banana over, and a 2-year-old can open that banana. Now, I wouldn't insult anyone by saying I learned this from a monkey. Mental ruts. Mental ruts. It's fun. We laugh, and I appreciate that we can get together and laugh like this, but seriously, when I saw this, and in my evening meditation during my introspection, I started thinking about how programmed we are by habits from past lives and from present lives, from our culture, from our upbringing, from society, from the media. Something this simple, but take it a little deeper, take it a little more seriously. How do we look upon other people? Is it just based on habits that we've learned that might be good, that might not be good, that might be right, that might not be right, that are based on truth or maybe not based on truth? How do we think about ourselves? What's the habitual way that we look upon ourselves? How do we look upon success? How do we look upon happiness? How do we react to challenges? How programmed are we really? The banana takes on a little different aspect, doesn't it? When you take it that next step. I hope you get the point. I really wanted everyone to understand, how it's right in front of us all the time, how powerful habits really are, and how blinding and how limiting they actually can be and are. On the other side of the scale, from the banana, let's go to the cosmic aspect of life for a couple of minutes. And I'm addressing this part of my talk tonight to everyone who's here, but especially to all those devotees who are downstairs in the Pasadena ballroom, who will go home tonight and say, we saw Brother Vishwananda give a wonderful talk. We heard him speak. Now, what did they really see? A big screen with an image of light and shadow? How many times in Master teachings do you remember he used the analogy of the movie, that life is just a movie of light and shadow? Think about that. That's another aspect of delusion. How real is life? Really, how real is it? It's just light and shadow. So ultimately, how much control do we have over our lives? How seriously do we take life? Worth thinking about, isn't it? Because if we're spiritual seekers, and our lives are driven by these habits, and we're caught up in this movie and believe it's real. Remember the quote Master said, a dream head hit on a dream wall causes what? Dream pain. It's pretty real, isn't it? And all of you have probably noticed throughout the week, all of us got together before convocation and in planning our talks tried to focus as much as we could on those aspects of Guruji's teachings that will help you in the challenges that you're facing today and that we're facing today. SRF, the monastics, we're also part of the world. We also have our challenges. We're also impacted by the various challenges that all of us are going through, that life is presenting to us right now. How do we raise our consciousness beyond this powerful delusion? How do we get beyond the dream pain? And how do we perpetuate that level of consciousness? How do we, not just rise above it, but able to maintain that throughout life? Through our struggle to find God, through the obvious and real ups and downs that we all experience. I was at the Lake Shrine recently, standing in front of the visitor center, and just to my left is that large, beautiful rose garden. And a man with a small boy, maybe 5 or 6 years old, small, came up and were standing before the rose garden. And I noticed the little boy was touching some of the roses with reverence. You could tell he wasn't, just grabbing them, but just touching them like he was totally enamored or just in awe with these roses. And it touched me. So I went inside and I got a pair of clippers and I came out and I asked him, would you like a rose? And he smiled and just with joy said, oh yes, I would like a rose. And I said, well, what color would you like? Because there's an array of colors. And do you know what he said? He said, I want a rainbow rose. A rainbow rose. I'm not God. What am I supposed to do? A rainbow rose. And it touched me very deeply. And what I ended up doing was, giving him several roses of different colors because that's the best I could do. Is it only a child who can have a dream like that? We're all adults here. Do we still have dreams like that? If someone asked you what color rose you wanted, how would you answer? And to finish the story, I asked him what he was going to do with it, and he said, I'm going to give it to that one that I love the most. And I didn't ask him who that was. I didn't need to know, but it was very touching. But what it reminded me of was this. Remember the words that Guruji spoke? The last words he spoke at the Biltmore Hotel before he left his body? And these are just the last few lines because it's important that I share these with you. Where Ganges, woods, Himalayan caves, and men dream God. I am hallowed, my body touched that sod. Where men dream God. Is that a child's dream? Is it only a child who can have such a dream? Are we so caught up in life? Are we so satiated with habit? So blinded and hypnotized by what we believe is real that we've lost the ability to dream? Master said the life of an ordinary man is monotonous at best. He wakes, bathes his body, enjoys the after-bath sensation, eats breakfast, hurries to work, begins to get weary, is refreshed by lunch, again pursues his work, and finally goes home, bored and listless. The hour of his too-heavy dinner is punctuated by various noises from radio or television, and often ill-humored remarks from his family. This typical man or woman may then attend the movies or a party for a brief diversionary respite. He comes home late, is very tired, and sleeps heavily. What a life. But he repeats this performance with unimaginative variations throughout the best years of his life. And this is the world at large, isn't it? This is the world at large. And then God sent a divine one, an avatar, a Prem avatar, who told us, and to me, this is the greatest message that Sri Sri Paramahansa Yogananda, our Guru, has given to the world. The greatest message. What is the purpose of life? To find God. And that this life that we think is so real is a dream. Because if you really don't believe that, in your heart, if you really don't believe that, you're not going to be able to sustain your spiritual efforts. Because delusion and habit is simply too strong. You have to have a dream that comes from your heart, that comes from your soul, that's so powerful, so magnetic, so enchanting, that you're willing to let your entire life revolve around that dream. Master often used the analogy of the relationship between God and the soul as the vast ocean, and the individual souls are like waves that rise out of that ocean and for a short time take on an individual identity. An individual identity. And as Guruji taught us, the purpose of life is to find God. That can be a little misleading because there's really nothing to find. If we're totally identified with the wave, if we're totally caught up in our habits and delusion and our identification with the body and the mind and the drama around us as real, then it makes sense. You have to find something. There's something missing in your life. But if you understand that the wave, your sense, at least, your limited perception of being in the physical body, on a physical realm, but you dream of God, you dream that there's something else to life beyond your day-to-day experience as Master has given, that there is joy, there is peace, there is wisdom, there is divine love. And you're already part of it. How powerful are Master's words? You know, how powerful is this dream? And not dream in some subconscious sense, you know, part of the delusion, but a cosmic dream of truth that's attainable, that we can experience. That's our dream. God sent a master. God sent a master to awaken us from the dream of delusion to awaken us to the dream of reality, the cosmic dream. I thought what I would do, I've listed a few steps, a few actions that we as souls need to take to help us realize the dream. To first begin to experience it, and once we experience it, to increase our awareness of the dream, and to eventually be able to merge in that dream. In other words, to be aware of that underlying reality of our physical lives, of our lives in the world, of being able to face the challenges and the problems, the difficulties and the disappointments that life throws at us, but also remember the other side, the joys, the successes, the friendships, because after all, it is delusion. And sometimes what we might call the positive side of delusion is also a mirage. If we become so caught up in it, so enamored by it, or so satisfied with it, that we again forget the ocean below those experiences and don't realize where those experiences are coming from. We've had wonderful classes all week. touching on many of the aspects of Master's wonderful soul awakening teachings. And first and foremost, and this comes from Master himself, I've heard this myself so many times from our beloved Dhyamata, that when the direct disciples would go to Master with questions or problems, what was the answer? It wasn't a satsang. And what else? Meditate, meditate, meditate. Meditate, meditate, meditate. Meditate, meditate, meditate. I wonder how many hundreds of thousands or more times Master said that. And not just spoken, but in his writings. It's always meditation, isn't it? That's the key. Along with this, soul awakening message where he reveals the reality of life, he's brought the way to achieve and experience that reality. To remove that sense of separation that exists in the consciousness of most people, the separation between the wave and the ocean. Meditation. It's in meditation when we learn to withdraw our consciousness away from the senses, away from this physical world, reverse the flow of our consciousness, our awareness, away from the material world, into the spine, up the spine to the higher centers of consciousness, where we begin to perceive and experience God. Experience God. And what are we experiencing? If we're the little wave and we're part of the big ocean, ultimately we're experiencing our true self, isn't it? We're experiencing our true self. And we begin to identify with that peace. As we go deeper, we begin to identify with that joy and that love that we experience as we deepen our meditative efforts and our meditative experience. You're fulfilling the dream. It's not imagination. It's truth. So to keep that dream alive, to keep building on that dream, there's no other way. No other way. No other way to experience God and to re-experience who we really are, who we truly are. We're souls. There's no other way. Ultimately, it begins and ends with meditation. And to keep that divine dream alive, it takes a commitment. We have to put a value on our meditations. How important is that dream to us? How important is it? Ask ourselves that regularly. There's no other way except to put the highest value on our periods of meditation. Next is silence. God loves silence. Where do we begin to experience God when we meditate? We silence the senses, isn't it? We practice our energization exercises. We sit down in meditation posture. We tense and relax. We're ready to start withdrawing that awareness from the body. We practice Hong Sau technique. We begin to calm and concentrate the mind, to settle down all the restless motion of the mind. And what do we experience? Silence. Inner silence. Inner silence. How important that is. But so too is outer silence. If we're constantly caught up in the motion and the noise, and not necessarily literally noise, clamorous noise, but is our mind caught up in outer activity? Silence. If you haven't noticed, go back to Master teachings and see how many times he uses the word silence, and he encourages us. Remember from the autobiography how he praised Mahatma Gandhi for his day of silence. He praised him for it. He put emphasis upon the need to find time, to be quiet, to settle the mind down, and to live internally in that inner silence. How much emphasis Master put upon silent retreats. In our SRF retreats, we emphasize silence. And we see the devotees. We see the devotees, so many, when they come, because of the demands that the restless world place upon them, they have to learn silence. Silence isn't a natural habit in our culture. Silence is not a natural habit. Interesting, isn't it? But in India, where men dream God, they have a word, maun, silence. It's quite common. Some of the seekers, the sadhus, the swamis, who've totally renounced, maintain silence for years. Now, we can't do that. We all live in a busy world, including myself. But don't lose sight of the need for silence. I can remember our beloved Ma, when she would come to her office in the morning, would always have a period of silence. She was working, she was serving, but it was more than just an example for the rest of us. It was a transition from deep meditation, from soul awareness, and not jumping into a life of activity. It was a transition. She would use silence to transition. Silence. I remember, I think it was the first convocation that I participated in. I led an evening meditation, and after the meditation, I was going up to one of the rooms in the elevator, and a number of devotees, probably 10 or 15, were crowded together, and many of the devotees were, "Oh, what a wonderful meditation, and you're a very good chanter," and we enjoyed the chant, which was all fine. I respected and appreciated that they had enjoyed the meditation. But I noticed in the very back, in the corner, was a lady just standing there like this with her eyes closed, in silence. She had put a value on her meditation, and she wanted to hang on to the results of that meditation, so she remained in silence. She remained internalized. How important that is to remember. Guruji, what's the example he uses? It's like milking the cow and then jumping up and kicking the bucket. We need to learn to live in silence. If we don't, we're on top of the wave, being kicked around, being knocked around by the wave of restlessness and by the waves of distraction and by habit, by all those forces that make us believe that this is reality, and it's not. God loves silence, and our souls love silence. Find little times. It can be 5 minutes where you just stop and interiorize during the day. It might be a Sunday morning where you have 2 or 3 hours that you can set aside and just live in silence. If you don't, the world is relentless, isn't it? It's unforgiving. We have to make these efforts. Where do most of our bad experiences come from in life? Think about this. Have you ever been really frustrated with a flower? Have you really, really been upset with the sunrise? Have you? Has a tree ever really ruined your day? It's those darn people, isn't it? It's those darn people that seem to upset our lives the most. But isn't that delusion? If I'm a soul and I'm part of God, and all of you are souls and part of God, aren't all those darn people souls? Part of your dream has to be that you look upon everyone as a soul. Has to be. It has to be. If you don't, delusion has you. Delusion has you. You're trapped. And this is hard. It's very difficult. At the same time, it's part of God's greater plan. Part of His or her plan to lead us back to that oneness, to the fulfillment of that soul dream, which is our birthright. It's part of the plan. How do we learn patience? How do we learn surrender? How do we learn forgiveness? And there's also the positive side. Those people, those sterling examples of the higher qualities. When we see them, aren't we moved by it? Like the little boy who was going to give the rose to that person he loves the most. That was his soul speaking. That was his heart speaking. So God is there. God is there, either expressing those divine qualities or giving us opportunities to develop our own. And even those very, very, very sad cases of people, even with our greatest efforts, where we just can't seem to see or perceive any goodness. Pick up the newspaper. Every day, the news, the sad, incredibly sad things that people are doing to each other. Even then, we can pray. Even then we can pray. Even then there's something we can do. There's something that we can learn from those people. They're giving us an opportunity if we're looking upon them as souls. And ultimately, think about this. Think about this. If we're all part of the same sea, if we're all one, how can you judge someone else? Reason tells you that you're judging yourself. If you criticize someone, reason tells you you're criticizing yourself. Learn to see others as souls. It's part of the bigger dream. It's the dream of truth. And in so doing, you're affirming that you too are a soul. I have another Lake Shrine story. I like to watch the drama of life, the journey of life, if you will. I remember once I was with Brother Anandamoy at the International Airport in Los Angeles, and we were waiting for some of the monastics to arrive from India, and there was this ramp where people come up with their luggage as they depart. And I kept asking Brother, wouldn't you like to sit down? Would you like to sit down? Because the plane was late. And we ended up standing there for, I think, about 2 hours. And he said no, just quietly watching, not saying a thing, until finally he looked up and said, Just imagine, one day they'll all be free. So I was doing something similar one day. I was out at the lake shrine, sitting on a bench off to one side, to a corner, and a man came onto the Court of Religions, and he's what, in general, I think they're called bikers. 6'2", 300 pounds, big beard, long hair, sleeveless shirt with tattoos, biceps as big as my waist, big leather boots, some kind of medallion on a chain around his neck. The thoughts that go through your mind, because of habit, and because society's trained us to say he's a biker. Well, I went into the visitor center about 15 minutes later, and the biker walked in. The biker. That was my thought. Now I'm admitting. And he picked up a book, Autobiography of a Yogi, opened it up, and there was a picture of Mahatma Gandhi and Master together. And he started reminiscing, talking with the volunteer devotee behind the desk, that, oh yes, I've been to Wardha. I visited Mahatma Gandhi's ashram. And as he talked, it turned out that he had been born in Afghanistan, and later his family moved to India. His family were friends with the Nehrus, the first prime minister. He'd been educated in some of the best educational institutions in the world, had traveled extensively, had a PhD, a fairly well-known artist, a sculptor, who works in life-size bronzes, a philanthropist. He's used his success to build schools for the poor all over South America. Biker. We have to train ourselves to look upon people as souls. They're souls. Master's organization in India, Jagoda Satsanga Society of India, is involved in extensive relief work. And starting maybe even 40 or 50 years ago, when leprosy was still rampant, was still a very serious disease, and since been, if not totally eradicated, almost totally eradicated. And in India, anyone, who caught leprosy, who was infected by leprosy, was literally tossed into the street, regardless of their status. Even the highest families, they were outcasts into the street. They had to beg for a living. And Jagoda Satsanga Society of India to this day maintains 2 leprosy colonies where we began to provide them with a place to live, with medicine, gradually taught them crafts so they would no longer have to go out on the street and beg. The women were taught weaving, the men were taught welding and bicycle repair. Eventually we provided them with a small hospital that's named after Ma, the Dayamata Dispensary. And on one of my recent visits to Ranchi, to our ashram, I went out to one of the leper colonies because over the years I got to know a few of them fairly well, and we were friends. And as I approached, I saw there was some celebration going on. There was music, there was some dancing and singing, and I could tell they had a big fire with a big steel cauldron, and they were stirring, making some type of special food. And as I joined them, the elder, one of the senior, who'd lived in the colony probably almost from the beginning, A man without a face. Leprosy had destroyed his face. No nose, no fingers, no toes, just stubs. But since cured. A man who'd been tossed into the street. A man who'd begged for a few grains of rice just to survive. And he approached me and he said, Swamiji, he said, do you think you could help us? He said, it's one of our seniors' birthday, and we're celebrating, and we went out, we got food, we got a few simple things to celebrate, but we didn't have enough money. Do you think you could help us? And I had maybe 400 or 500 rupees, the Indian currency, in my pocket. $10, maybe. So I took it out and I handed it to him. And he thanked me. And a few minutes later he came back and he said, Swamiji, please take this. And he was giving me back over half the money. And he said, I don't need all of it, I only need this much. This is all we spent. That was his soul speaking. That was his soul speaking to me. Think of his character. This downtrodden position, and yet his soul was shining through. So always look for the soul in everyone. The next thing is study. Study of Master teachings. And again, in this restless world that we live in, what's it called on the internet? Surfing? It just, again, I'm not being judgmental. I use the internet myself. It's a very incredible tool. The amount of knowledge and information that's at your fingertips. But if you're a yogi and you're trying to live an interiorized life, and you really put a value on that interiorized life, again, you have to weigh how you spend your time very carefully. And reading a quote or seeing a piece of information and jumping to another is not the way to study Master teachings. And I'm not even implying that anyone here does that. But I'm just pointing out the importance of studying the way that Master has given in the lessons. You read, and you reflect on it, and you meditate on it, and you ask yourself, what does this mean to me? And how can I apply this in my own life? Our beloved Ma said, whenever I would come across an inspiring passage from any scripture, or when Master gave us guidance, I didn't just memorize it. I made it a part of my daily sadhana, a part of our spiritual life. No matter how inspired we may be by a spiritual truth, it has little meaning unless we put it into practice. Do not become one of those psychological antiques who says, that was a wonderful talk that Dayama gave. Aren't Master teachings marvelous? But soon they settle right back into their old, moldy habits. And I saw with Ma, this was wonderful with Ma. Wherever Ma would stop in her life, on the desk in her office, on the table where she sat in her sitting room, in the third floor middle room where she used to give audiences, wherever Ma would regularly sit, without even looking, she could put her hand and there was something of Master's writings nearby. Spiritual diary, whispers from eternity, something of Master's. And if she had just 1 or 2 or 3 minutes, she wouldn't sit there, and idle or talk to others. she'd pick it up and put those thoughts, those divine thoughts, those soul-reminding thoughts, those thoughts that transcend the world around us, the words of Master, the words of truth. This is very powerful. Master said, the body-bound person, wholly ignorant of his finer instrument of consciousness and action, remains busily engaged in desultory bodily activities, pulled hither and yon by desires and temptations, absorbed in trying to satisfy the restless demands of his physical nature. He experiences only transitory pleasures intermixed with violent miseries. The deeper he sinks in the Tamasic darkness of delusion, the farther he removes himself from the inner bliss and perfection of his true self, and from the supreme blessedness of God communion. His reascension, remember the wave? Reascension, his merging back into that ocean of God's consciousness, begins with determined effort to align his actions with the wisdom of scriptural guidance. It's a pretty powerful statement about study and about absorbing the Guru's teachings. You know, earlier I gave so much emphasis on meditation, and it does begin and end with meditation, but that's not the only key to our spiritual success, and that's not the only key to keeping that divine dream alive as we face the challenges of life. The reascension begins with determined effort to align his actions with the wisdom of scriptural guidance and culminates with the awakening of the subtle inner centers of divine perception. It's that important to fill your life, to fill your consciousness with the thoughts of the Guru. It's like a magic carpet. It's like a magic carpet. And when those situations in life come that confront all of us all the time, what do? You know, I have seen what our beloved Dayamata has done. Think of the responsibility that she's carried and continues, 96 years old. And I saw time and time and time and time again, I never heard once, Dayamata thinks this, I think we should do that. Never. It was always, what would Master do? What did Master do? What would Master want? She'd always stop and look within. And because she'd made those efforts, of course, in meditation to attune her life with Master, and because she had studied and absorbed his teachings, the answer was always there. It was being drawn from Master. She made the effort. I also had the blessing and good fortune to serve with Ma's sister, Anandamata. And how many times, I can't tell you, when we'd finish a letter or finish a project, and at the end of the day she'd say, well, let's think about it. I'd say, what? Think about it? It's done? We finished it? But what would she do? Invariably, I learned, she'd meditate on it. No, it wouldn't jump to action before she was assured from within that this is what Master would want, that this would what Master would do. And there were times when both Ma and Anandama, for example, would hand me a letter, an important letter, and ask me to take it to Master's shrine room and put it on his shoes and ask for his blessings. Now that may have been for my training, to emphasize to me how important it is to always turn to Master. But that's who they were, who they are. It was always Master first, always Master last, and Master all the time. And that's how Ma, has been able to accomplish so much in her life, to develop this worldwide organization and create, the experience that we're having tonight. She was the foundation of all of that. She took the seeds that Master gave, and that Rajasi, tended for a short time, but Ma carried on and manifested. Why and how? Because it was always Master, 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 Master. This wonderful dream opportunity that Master has given us would not be possible to even begin, let alone fulfill, if God had not sent us Master. Delusion's just too strong, isn't it? Even with Master's teachings, even with meditation, even with these volumes of wisdom, aren't there times when it's a real struggle? Isn't it? Everyone's laughing and smiling. It is. It's a battlefield. Krishna and Arjuna, they weren't having a picnic. It wasn't a picnic, it was a battlefield. It's a battlefield of life. And delusion is just too strong. Our past habits are just too deeply set for us to be able to win this battle alone. We need a guru. We need someone who's walked the path, someone who knows the pitfalls, and not just any guru. A God-realized guru, an omnipresent guru. Do you all really understand what omnipresent means? Do we really understand what omnipresent means and what it means to us? Beautiful story a devotee told me recently. She had married into a family that followed a very traditional Orthodox religion. And her mother-in-law, very skeptical. That's all I'll say. This yoga, what is this yoga? And she'd huff and puff and make a scene about it from time to time. And the devotee decided to go on a pilgrimage to India. India. And so the mother-in-law joined the husband and their 2 children to help take care of the household during that period. And this was related by the husband later, after the devotee returned. He said they were sitting around the dinner table one evening and had just finished their evening meal, and the mother-in-law got up and she was at the sink washing the dishes. And on a little shelf just above the sink, the devotee had placed a little picture of Master. And she was washing the dishes, and she reached up and she said, "I feel like he's watching me." And in a huff, she turned it around and kept on washing the dishes. And after a while, she called her son and says, "Come and take this picture away. Yogananda, I still feel he's watching me." Omnipresent. He's always there. He's always watching. And whether we accept him or not, he's a prema avatar. He's an incarnation of love. He's there to help us and guide us over the joyous experiences and the loving experiences and the challenges and the disappointments. He's always there. He understands the challenges. And God sent him as a channel to help us fulfill that divine dream, that soul dream that we all have to keep awake if we're to have that final divine experience, that final merging. And you know what the final thing is we have to do and what we have to learn to fulfill this dream? What's the one thing that God does not have? Okay. Is it difficult to love God? Does it seem that way sometimes? Just think, God's up there in heaven somewhere, very busy, running universes and galaxies and stars, and at the same time bugging mother-in-laws. He has to have some entertainment. Can running universes really be fun? I don't know. But he doesn't have our love. And you know how easy it is? Just imagine he's up there, and one soul, one little soul, out of the billions of people, caught up in delusion, caught up in their habits, caught up in the restlessness, the demands of the world, takes just one moment and stops and says, Lord, I love you. Universes, beware. Because God's going to stop in that moment, at least in that moment, and touch that soul. That's what Master does. He's an incarnation of love. And if we want to keep that divine dream not just alive, but vibrant, the magic carpet that carries us through life, that keeps us above all the habits, keeps us above the delusion. It's love. It's love. Swami Sri Yukteswar, the Lion of Bengal, fearsome. Love is God, he said. Love is God. Not merely as the noblest sentiment of a poet, but as an aphorism of eternal truth. To whatever religious creed a man may belong, and whatever be his position in society, if he properly cultivates this ruling principle, naturally implanted in his heart, he is sure to be on the right path to save himself from wandering in this creation of darkness. It's love. It's love. And how do we love God? I just gave you one example. Let's all do it. Close your eyes. There's 4,000 of us. We're going to shake the galaxies here. But sincerely, go inside. We've had this wonderful week together. Classes, divine friendship, focusing on master teachings, meditations, pilgrimage tours, stepping out of the world for these few days to bathe our consciousness in those higher perceptions. Together, let's, God, come on together. God, I love you. My Lord, I love you. Divine Mother, I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. How real that love is. It is not a dream. And when we love God, when we surrender to God, when we dedicate our lives to following our Guru, what greater way to love God? But God has sent us a Guru, and Guru is just the speaking voice of silent God. It's the representative of God. And what greater way to love God than to strive to be like Guruji, to meditate, to follow these divine teachings, to try to see everyone as a soul. He saw everyone as a soul. He treated people as a soul. All the points that I've touched on tonight are nothing more or nothing less than loving God. Love is not a noun, it's a verb, it's an action. It's a giving of the soul. It's an expression of our true nature. And when we're giving love, we become love. We're manifesting love, isn't it? And we're instantaneously in that moment. Not just when we stop and say, Lord, I love you, but in that action, you're saying, Lord, I love you. I love you so much that I want to be like you. I'm going to live the way you have shown me how to live. That's what keeps that fire alive. That's the foundation of your spiritual life. That's the one habit that shines above all other habits, is our love for God. Our love for God. And if we love God, one day, the dream, the dreamer, and the object of our dreams will all become one. All become one. That is what our beloved Master has brought to us. That's the dream. So, dreamers, I'd like to close with these words of our beloved Guru from his poem called The Noble New. Sing songs that none have sung. Think thoughts that ne'er in brain have rung. Walk in paths that none have trod. Weep tears as none have shed for God. Give peace to all to whom none other gave. Claim him your own, who's everywhere disclaimed. Love all with love that none have felt, and brave the battle of life with strength unchained. Jai Guru.